the increased presence of terrorism emerging rapidly, one question has been raised. With the rise of globalisation, is terrorism inevitable? The answer differs. However, it is clear that with political, economical and social interconnectivity being a factor of globalisation, the risk and presence of activity relating to terrorism is inevitable. It can be seen that loss of national sovereignty and the barriers that once saw the world somewhat segregated have been broken down by means of new technological resources, the introduction of information superhighways, social media and political interconnection, which subsequently promotes means of communication that allow terrorist activities to be easily organised. While this is a general and broad statement, the issue of terrorism in relation to globalisation can be broken down to the various factors relative, such as political interconnection, the breaking down of barriers globally, and increased social interconnection. As discussed earlier, there are many factors that contribute to the belief that some aspects of globalisation have been a factor in the increased presence of terrorist activity, the most prominent being social and political interconnection on the global front. Historians also suggest that loss of national sovereignty in the post-industrial age contributes to the likelihood of acts of terrorism, because of the lessened barriers that previously segregated the globe. With today's society being able to communicate freely as a result of technological advances in recent times, such as the invention of the telephone, internet, and social media sites such as Facebook and YouTube, the world is now able to communicate and share with a click of a mouse. Although however convenient and reliable these ways of communication may be, they do pose a very potential threat and contribute to the negative interconnection of our world. The internet provides a podium in which terrorist figures can broadcast their views on religion, nationalism and war. And with anyone with access to the internet not only being able to read, watch and listen to their ideologies but interact with them, the formation of groups with the same ideas bring the reality of terrorism ever closer. The September 11 terrorist attacks, committed by multinational terrorist group Al-Qaeda, prove that globalisation has in fact been a benefactor to the increased presence of terrorism. It reinstated that the liberalisation of transport and relations and the easy distribution of labour, ideologies and trade around the globe, with limited or no governmental interference, supplements the presence of terrorism. Al-Qaeda is perhaps the largest multinational terrorist organisation in the world, and the first of its kind. There are several factions that make up the organisation, predominantly pro-jihad Muslims. The success of this organisation relies solely on developments only made possible by globalisation, the facilitation of new ways to communicate internally, and to gain new followers by broadcasting their ideas and objectives on the internet. These measures are only possible because of globalisation, and without them, organisations like these would not work on such a large scale. It can be seen that transnational communication was an integral part of the 9/11 terror attacks. Al-Qaeda used modern media to broadcast messages to regional television and had the ability to communicate internally throughout the world, regardless of their geographical whereabouts. However, the most powerful use of modern media throughout the 9/11 terror attacks was presented from the visuals of the attacks itself, which were broadcasted all over the world, creating hysteria, anxiety, and confusion, even for those who weren't there. The 9/11 terror attacks were the perfect negative representation of the effects of globalisation. It changed the way we think about social interconnection and the homogenization of our world. Loss of national sovereignty and the rise of modern media has indefinitely contributed to terrorism. These two negative attributes of globalisation have, as stated earlier, contributed as a cause for terrorism. National sovereignty has been broken down by globalisation, enabling international communication, relations, and lessened security measures. The September 11 terror attacks would have been impossible without these availabilities. Only embedding the ideology that globalisation is the main cause for terrorism. In order to rehabilitate the national security state, the reassertion of national sovereignty is inexorable. Media publicity is the oxygen of terrorism. These are the words said by former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and she was right. Terrorist organisations gain propaganda from media attention. Media publicity allows terrorist organisations such as Al-Qaeda to influence their audience by explaining the existence, ideas, and methods of their organisation, and in turn generate and attract a large audience, which subsequently urges governmental attention and political amendment. One example of this can be seen from al-Qaeda's most prominent leaders, Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri, who regularly sent in videos depicting themselves as leaders of the Muslim community. They also outlined the aims and methods of the organisation, which subsequently sent analysts and general members of the public into a frenzy. So it is evident that media publicity does indefinitely oxygenate terrorist intentions. There are numerous factors that can be taken into consideration when it comes to reasoning global terrorism. However, through this information it has become clear that globalisation is a dominant one. Through technological advances, global interconnectedness, and social and political change, this has been represented. The question now is not how globalisation attributes terrorism, but how it can be controlled. We cannot live in a political violence-free world. However, we can coexist and enjoy the many benefits and positive attributes of a globalised world.